I am Kenny Anderson, Director of Multicultural Affairs for the City of Huntsville, and welcome to Impact. Each week we bring you information about exciting things that are happening in our community, and today will be no different. One of the great things that happens from time to time in this community is that I get a chance to talk with people who are doing some really interesting things, and sometimes that interesting thing is built around literature, writing, authoring books, and things of that nature. I have an author with me today. Her name is Knowles, and she is the author of this book called The Doughnut Tree. And I want to introduce her to you this afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast, Catherine.
Thank you, Kenny, for having me today. It's my pleasure.
It's good to have you, and congratulations on the book. This is your first book.
Yes, it is.
And that's got to be real exciting. Before we even talk about the book, I want to talk about the process. How does somebody sit down one day and say, I want to write a book? Where does that come from, and how do you begin moving forward in that process? And talk from your perspective.
From my perspective, Kenny, it was really interesting because I live on the Tennessee River here in Huntsville, and I discovered that a man was hung on my property, and I wanted to know why. It was just morbid curiosity. I wanted to know what this man did so bad that someone would hang him. This was in 1915. And I wanted to know about his family, and I wanted to know who did it and why they did it, and what happened to him. And so I began my research at the Huntsville Public Library, in the Record Center, and at the Heritage Room on the 3rd floor. And I eventually did find out what happened. His name was Herman Dealey. He was a black man that was hung by 3 white guys. There were 20 white witnesses. The part that I found fascinating is this was 1915. There was a murder trial. Back in that time, there usually wasn't any, ramifications for people doing this to the black community. And so I found that, yes, there was a trial and they did get off the hook. But because of my search for a man named Herman Dealey, I dedicated the book to him because I would have never written the book had I not, started looking for him and just wondering what happened to him. I never did find out anything that happened to him.
In terms of why he was hung?
I just couldn't, there was no information. There was, the trial, and like I said, there was 20 witnesses, but, they did it, but they got off the hook.
Right.
But, so when I was looking for this, I found all these other crazy things that were happening in Huntsville between the years of 1900 and 1926. And I went through many probate records, murder trials, tax records, the microfiche in the films of, the newspapers at the time. And I actually got to go through some of the newspapers. And I just kept, running across things that I thought, oh my gosh, this happened in Huntsville. And one of the things I'm referring to is the murder of a judge. There was an election, he won, his opponent lost, and he took the judge down to Ditto Landing, which is also close to my home. And the judge was murdered there, and they threw his body in the river. And during this time, Alabama was dry. And so bootlegging was very, very, lucrative income, especially for the politicians. And so this judge and about 6 of his friends were all in on a ring of, bringing in booze illegally from the Tennessee River. And there was a lot of money to be made. And so his opponent eventually got caught, but there were 6 of them all together. And let me begin by the sheriff was implicated somehow, so he committed suicide, and so did the assistant district attorney committed suicide. One fellow got mysteriously hit by a train, and one died of the fever. But the man who was caught and convicted, this brought national attention to Huntsville with newspapers from New York to Los Angeles, and they camped out here for about probably 6 months to a little small town in Alabama with a population of about 10,000 people. And the jurors were corrupted because the media got into their hotel rooms, and who knows what all happened. But the man who was convicted, they put him in the Birmingham jail. They were afraid he would escape out of Huntsville. So he's in Birmingham waiting the appeal, of the trial. And guess what? He busts out of Birmingham jail. He has a car waiting for him with guns and cash and tickets to South America. So he doesn't even make it out of Birmingham before he gets in a shootout with the cops. And he gets killed. They're all dead. And I always wondered, after reading this murder trial, who set him up? Was it a friend trying to help him get out of jail? Or was it one of his competitors trying to silence him forever and not come back to Huntsville? So this case is often used in a lot of law schools, because if the trial were held today, he would probably have gotten off on self-defense. But who knows, with all the corruption and everything going on, so we'll never know. All of them are gone.
Well, what's interesting about everything that you've said so far is that you haven't even gotten to the novel yet. This
No,
is real things
these are
that happen
real things.
right here in our community.
And so, yes, and it happened in Huntsville. And so when I was reading about this, and kind of this idea of a story was bubbling up in my head, but I thought, I don't want murder in my book. That's the last thing I want to write about. Well, by the time I was done, there's 12. 12 murders. And most everything in the book is real. The main characters are fictitious that I pulled the story together to make it more readable. And, I had to have a little bit of love and romance and, of course, a hero dog. And also I threw in the Alabama's first national football championship and had my whole crew from Huntsville load up on trains and go be part of the cheering team of the Alabama Crimson Tide on 1926.
So tell us about the premise of the Doughnut Tree. We already know that the backdrop is a lot of these things that you discovered in the process of researching the time. So tell us what this book essentially is about.
It's about a man who was probably outside his time because he believed in people regardless of color, where they're from, whether it be another country or anything. And I've had one reviewer told me, do you think it's plausible that one white man could care so much about the black community during this time? And I answered her immediately, yes. I grew up with a grandmother who was extremely racist. It was just horrible. But yet that made my mother completely the opposite. And so that's what I grew up with. I was a child during the 60s, and my mother showed me there was no color barriers. There was no boundaries for anybody. People were, from what they were on the inside. So I think, yes, there are good people all throughout time. There's been bad things that have happened to women, to people of color, all sorts of things. But there are good people in life too. That's just how I feel. My main character, maybe it's too good to be true, but in my heart, there were people like that.
Yeah, and so this main character is
Percy Taylor. Yes.
Percy Taylor is the main character in the book, and essentially, what is the storyline in a very general way? Of course, we want people to check out the book, but just how would you describe this book?
Well, it starts off, I begin with, showing his life. Everything's all happy and happy-go-lucky. And then tragedy strikes his family, 2 people in his family. So he's left to raise a daughter on his own. And he, wasn't prepared for that. But he did the best he could, educating her as well as he could, exposing her to all walks of life and different kinds of people. And, through that, I pulled so many things from my real life into the story. For example, the chapter on Jaji, he's an immigrant from Poland. I'm speaking of my grandfather. This is what happened to him. So I used parts of my own life in there. He was 13 years old, and he had no future ahead of him in Poland. So he made it his way through who knows what means on a ship over here through Ellis Island. And so I took liberties and kind of filled in the blanks and have him, travel across the world. And it was all just to get to a little small town that he heard about called Taylorsville in Alabama. And, so that's one of the aspects of the story. And the other one's of a small girl who has a tragic, tragic childhood. She leaves Huntsville. She has I'll say an adventuresome life that, it's probably not very glamorous, but she survived. She was a survivor throughout her whole life. And Percy Taylor, the main character, provides a way for her to come back here. And that also is from my life. I pull things from my, tragedies from my own life and put it into that character. And also, some of the villains in the book, those are real life people. I was able to use this as a little bit of therapy. When I would write the book, I would pull from, the bad guys in my life. And I'm like, oh, I don't really have to make too much up here. I just fill in, change the names a little bit, and I have a villain. But so there's some of the things that I have in the book, and there's it's not all murder, it's all not gloom and doom. There's some fun aspects of it. Well,
I'm interested too, or curious about when you're writing a book, I would imagine that there's also a process of discovery. As your characters evolve and as the backdrop kind of finds some sort of context and how you place the characters in the context of what you're writing. Was there anything that you discovered about yourself, about your perspective in life, and just that whole journey of actually developing this concept? some discovery.
You have no idea what you've just tapped into. I realized, without getting religious, how important God is in my life. I at times I would just stop and think, how am I doing this? And I finally realized it wasn't me. God was working through me. Yes, it was my handwriting. Yes, it was my stories. But I truly believe God wanted me to write this. I can't tell you why. One night I was just, kind of doubtful about the publishing. Was I going to get it done? Did I want to spend the money? Because I self-published. And I just had a meeting with God, I'll say, and I truly believe keeping the faith has really been what's keeping my success going in this. I want to give my creator full credit. I mean, yes, I'm the one pushing the book and it's my name on there, but we all know it came from a higher source.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really interesting too, because I think there are those points of discovery as people go through, whether they're writing a dissertation or a thesis, or they're writing a book, or they've got some kind of a manuscript or a screenplay. There are always these things, I'm sure, that people discover along the way that actually inform them. I wonder, we've got about 2 minutes left. I wonder if there's another book inside of you.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. There is a book inside of me, and it's the prequel to this one.
Oh, it's
and
a prequel.
It's about Huntsville also, and a lot of people might know a little bit about Madam Molly Teal.
Ah.
She was a madam that died in the late 1898, 98. And when she died, she was a very wealthy woman. She had no children and no family to speak of. And so when she made her will, she made her huge Victorian mansion. She donated it to the city of Huntsville to become the Huntsville Infirmary, which later became Huntsville Hospital. So we have a madam to thank for our healthcare system in Huntsville. But she was much more than the madam. I have just done an extensive amount of research on her, which I'm sure a lot of people have, because she's kind of famous. But where I'm going to be just really enjoying writing the book is giving her a personality, because I don't think anybody's born wanting to be a madam. Her true story is she was 10 years old. Her mother tried to give her away. No one would take her in. And her mother was forced into prostitution. It was during the Civil War. And unfortunately, no one would take the daughter in, so the mother took little baby 10-year-old Molly Teal to the soldiers' camps with her, and that began her life of prostitution. And by the time that was at 10, so by the time she was 15, she was so successful, if you want to call it that, she was able to come into Huntsville and buy 5 homes with cash. Wow. 15 years old. Wow. So I want to be able to give her personality. She did a lot for Huntsville that people really don't know about. She was a woman that was successful in many ways other than prostitution. In the 1870s, she was able to buy up property for low, and a few weeks later turn around and flip it and make $20,000 profit. This is outstanding for, women didn't really have a lot of opportunities during that time frame. So that's my next book. And
so will it be a novel? Or?
Yeah, I believe, yes, I'm already working on it, but I've got a little bit sidetracked because a Hollywood movie producer has read my book.
Wow.
Yes, and he thinks I ought to start working on a screenplay. So I'm going to put the prequel to the side and maybe get, I didn't know anything about writing a book. I don't know anything about writing a screenplay, but since I don't know the rules, I'm just going to push forward and see what comes out in the end. And I would like to say that a lot of people feel like that, they've been this person their whole life. I was 52 years old when I published this book. That's a whole new chapter for me. Yeah. If I can do it, I'm a product of Huntsville City School Systems. I hope you don't look at my records because I wasn't that great of a student. I preferred, going down to the river. And so those teachers at Grissom High School, I hope I can make them proud that I've actually, accomplished something. I have a published book.
Well, I'm sure you have, and when you're accepting your Academy Award, think about us.
I will.
For best screenplay, whatever year that might be, and then come back on the show and bring your Oscar with you.
Well, I'd love for them to film the movie in Huntsville and let us all be extras, That would be great.
That would be really a lot of fun. The book is The Doughnut Tree. It's by Knowles, and we know that people can pick this book up, I'm sure, on Amazon and some other local places.
You sure can. A lot
of
local
fantastic. Knowles, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Kenny.
And keep us abreast of what's happening with the prequel and the screenplay and all the other fun stuff that's going on with you.
Thank you.
All right. We hope that you enjoyed this fascinating journey through old Huntsville. Who knew? Well, you know now, and it's all in the Doughnut Tree. great book and great opportunity to learn something about things that happened well before our time, but certainly are significant parts of our history. Catherine Knowles is the author of The Doughnut Tree, and you can check her out on Amazon.com. You can also check us out on Facebook and like our page. It's Impact with Kenny Anderson, where we will have this broadcast as well as past shows and behind-the-scenes looks of stuff that happens when the cameras aren't rolling. It'll be a lot of fun sometimes, and we hope that you'll definitely like that page. For Impact, I'm Kenny Anderson, asking you to have a safe day, a great week, and we'll talk again soon.